under the warm sun of the Italian peninsula. Long before marble temples rose and emperors ruled over distant lands, there stood humble settlements clustered around the winding Tiber River. Here, in the 8th century BCE, a tale began, one that would outlast the very stones of its city. This is the story of Rome, its birth from myth, its rise through conquest, and its fall into the dust of history. Legend tells of twin brothers Romulus and Remus, born of Mars, the god of war, and a mortal woman, Rhea Silvia. Abandoned as infants, they were said to have been suckled by a she-wolf, their cries echoing through the forests of Latium. When they grew to manhood, fate guided them to found a city. But blood would mark Rome's first foundation. Romulus slew his brother in anger, and in 753 BCE became the first king of Rome. Myth or memory, this story shaped a people who would forever see destiny as something seized through struggle. In those early centuries, Rome was a monarchy, a patchwork of Latin, Sabine, and Etruscan traditions. Kings ruled with divine sanction, but it was the Etruscans to the north who brought sophistication, the arts, the toga, the gladiatorial games, and the discipline of urban order. Yet the Romans, fiercely proud and restless, would not bow forever. Around 509 BCE, the last king, Tarquin the Proud, was overthrown in revolt after his son's cruelty sparked outrage. From the ashes of monarchy, a new idea was born, the Roman Republic. Now ruled not by kings, but by men, consuls, senators, and citizens, the Republic became a delicate dance between democracy and power. The Senate, an assembly of patrician elders, guided Rome's destiny, while the plebeians, the common people, demanded their voice. Through struggle, they gained it. The conflict of the orders birthed the office of the tribune, protector of the people. And in this crucible of debate and ambition, Rome began its expansion. First came the Latin wars, then the conquest of the Italian peninsula. But Rome's true test would come from the west, across the sea from Carthage, a mercantile empire founded by Phoenician traders. The Punic Wars would define the Republic's destiny. In 264 BCE, Rome and Carthage clashed over Sicily, a fertile jewel between their worlds. It was a struggle of endurance, Rome learning the art of naval warfare, Carthage wielding its maritime might. After decades of blood and fire, Rome triumphed, and Sicily became its first province. But it was the Second Punic War that seared itself into memory. In 218 BCE, Hannibal Barca, a Carthaginian general of unmatched brilliance, led his army complete with war elephants across the Alps. It was an audacious act that stunned the world. At Trebia, at Trasimene, and at Cannae, he annihilated Roman legions. Yet for all his victories, he could not break Rome's will. Under the generalship of Publius Cornelius Scipio, later called Africanus, Rome struck back. In 202 BCE, at Zama, Hannibal met defeat, and Carthage was humbled. Rome emerged not just as a power, it was now a superpower. Its legions stretched across the Mediterranean, its senate ruling with iron discipline. But power, as always, breeds ambition. The Republic began to fracture under the weight of its conquests. Wealth flowed into Rome, but so did corruption. Generals, backed by armies loyal to them rather than the state, began to overshadow the Senate. The cries of the poor echoed louder in the streets. Reformers like Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus tried to bring justice to the dispossessed, but their efforts ended in bloodshed. Rome had learned a terrible truth. Even within its walls, civil war could burn as fiercely as any foreign campaign. And so began the age of generals. Marius reformed the legions, Sulla marched on Rome itself, and the Republic's old values crumbled beneath ambition's weight. Into this chaos stepped three men whose names would reshape history: Julius Caesar, Pompey the Great, and Crassus the First Triumvirate. Caesar, brilliant and relentless, conquered Gaul, his victories immortalized in his own words: Veni, Vidi, Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. But when the Senate, fearful of his power, ordered him to disband his army, Caesar made a fateful choice. Crossing the Rubicon River in 49 BCE, he set in motion the death of the Republic. Civil war followed, swift and brutal. Caesar emerged victorious, declared dictator for life. Yet the same Senate that had crowned him would also conspire to end him. On the Ides of March 44 BCE, beneath the marble pillars of the theater of Pompey, daggers found his flesh. As he fell, Rome wept and the Republic died with him. From the chaos rose Caesar's heir, Octavian, later Augustus. Young, calculating, and ruthless, he defeated his rivals, Mark Antony and Cleopatra, at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE. In 27 BCE, he assumed a new title, Princeps, the first citizen. In name, the Republic still lived. In truth, an empire had begun. The age of emperors dawned. Under Augustus, Rome flourished in peace, the Pax Romana. Roads stretched from Britain to Egypt. Aqueducts carried water into cities of marble, and legions guarded the edges of the known world. The Colosseum, the Pantheon, the Forums all stood as testaments to Roman engineering and ambition. The arts thrived under poets like Virgil and Ovid. Philosophy found new life in Stoic minds like Seneca's. But beneath the grandeur, the empire's foundation trembled. Emperors followed Augustus, some wise, others mad. Tiberius ruled from shadows. Caligula, consumed by delusion, turned tyranny into spectacle. Nero burned in infamy, as Rome itself burned under his watch. Yet, from chaos, stability would return under the Flavian dynasty and the five good emperors Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius. Under their rule, the empire reached its zenith. Trajan's armies pushed into Dacia and Mesopotamia. Hadrian built walls to mark the empire's limits. Marcus Aurelius, philosopher king, pondered mortality as barbarian wars raged at the frontiers. But as all empires do, Rome began to wane, not through conquest, but decay. The plague, economic strain, and endless wars thinned its strength. By the 3rd century, emperors rose and fell in a blur of assassination and ambition. The once united empire split between East and West, its vastness too unwieldy to command from a single throne. Then came Constantine the Great. In 312 CE, under the sign of the cross, he claimed victory and transformed Rome forever. Christianity, once persecuted, became the empire's faith. A new capital rose in the east, Constantinople, the new Rome. Yet this shift marked the beginning of the end for the old world. The Western Empire, besieged by invasions, corruption, and exhaustion, could no longer hold. Goths, Vandals, and Huns swept through its borders. In 410 CE, Alaric and his Visigoths sacked Roma city that had not fallen in 800 years. The world trembled. Finally, in 476 CE, the last emperor of the West, Romulus Augustus, was deposed. The Roman Empire had fallen. Or had it? For in the East, the Byzantine Empire lived on a Roman world in Greek tongue. Its emperors from Justinian to Basil preserved the laws, the art, and the flame of Rome for 1,000 more years. Hagia Sophia's dome gleamed as the Colosseum crumbled. But even Byzantium would one day fall to the Ottoman Turks in 1453, when the last Roman emperor, Constantine XI, fell beneath the crescent banner. Yet Rome's spirit never truly died. Its laws shaped Europe's justice. Its architecture inspired every cathedral. Its language became the root of Latin tongues. Even the dream of empire reborn in Charlemagne's coronation, in the Holy Roman Empire, in the Renaissance echoed the heartbeat of that ancient city on the Tiber. From wolf and legend to empire and ruin, the story of Rome is not merely one of rise and fall. It is the story of civilization itself. For as long as stone stands and memory endures, Rome lives on, in the very idea of what it means to rule, to build, and to believe in eternity. As the last echo of the Western Roman Empire faded into the shadows of history, a new world began to take shape upon its ruins, a world both illuminated and haunted by the ghost of Rome. The eternal city, though broken, still stood. Its marble cracked, its temples fallen, yet its idea, its imperium lingered like a memory carved into the bones of Europe. In the years after 476 CE, no single empire arose to claim Rome's mantle. Instead, the world fractured. Across the former provinces, barbarian kings built their kingdoms upon the ashes of Roman order. The Visigoths ruled Hispania. The Ostrogoths took Italy. The Franks, under a chieftain named Clovis, carved out a realm in Gaul. Though they called themselves conquerors, they lived amidst Roman walls, governed with Roman laws, and prayed in churches once built by Roman hands. They were, in truth, the children of the empire they had destroyed. Far to the east, in Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire stood as Rome's living heir. To its emperors there was no Byzantine world, only the Romanum Imperium. Their capital glittered like a vision of eternity. Hagia Sophia's dome shimmered with golden mosaics. Scholars copied Latin texts in Greek script, and emperors ruled beneath a tapestry of ancient ceremony and divine rite. In the 6th century, one man sought to reclaim what was lost, to reunite the empire, to restore Rome's glory. His name was Justinian. Under Emperor Justinian the Great, the dream of Rome briefly flickered to life once more. He commanded his brilliant general Belisarius to reconquer the western provinces. In sweeping campaigns, Belisarius retook North Africa from the Vandals, Italy from the Goths, and much of the Mediterranean coastline. For a fleeting moment, the Roman eagle soared again over the ruins of the old empire. But Justinian's triumph came at a terrible cost. War drained the treasury, plague ravaged the population, and the fires of rebellion burned even in Constantinople itself. The Nika riots left tens of thousands dead. Whole districts of the city were reduced to ash. Yet from this destruction rose the crown jewel of the Byzantine world, the Hagia Sophia, a cathedral of such magnificence that visitors said it seemed not of man, but of God. Though his reconquest would not endure, Justinian's legacy would. His codification of Roman law, the Corpus Juris Civilis, would become the foundation of legal systems for centuries to come. Long after the empire's banners had vanished, its law, its order, and its logic would remain the silent architecture of Western civilization. As the centuries passed, Europe drifted further from its Roman past, yet its memory remained a compass for kings and popes alike. In the 8th century, across the lands once called the Gaul, a new power rose, the Franks, led by the mighty Charles Charlemagne. Crowned Emperor of the Romans by Pope Leo III in the year 800, Charlemagne sought to revive the empire in name and spirit. His coronation was not merely a ceremony, it was a declaration. The West would once again have its Rome. The Holy Roman Empire was born not of marble and legion, but of cross and crown. Though the title carried the weight of empire, it was, in truth, an echo of medieval reimagining of what had once been the unshakable heart of the ancient world. Under Charlemagne, learning and faith blossomed anew. Monasteries became the guardians of Roman knowledge, preserving manuscripts that might otherwise have been lost to time. Latin remained the language of scholars, law, and worship. Even the architecture of cathedrals, arches, domes, vaults were living descendants of Rome's genius. Yet the unity Charlemagne dreamed of would not last. After his death, his empire splintered among his heirs, giving rise to the nations of France and Germany. The medieval world emerged, a tapestry of kingdoms, dukedoms, and city-states, all tracing their lineage, their legitimacy, to the Roman name. The Pope in Rome held spiritual authority. The emperors in the north wielded temporal power, and between them stretched centuries of alliance and rivalry. In the east, the Byzantine Empire continued its long twilight. It faced endless wars against Persians, against Bulgars, and later against the rising tide of Islam. Yet it remained a beacon of art, theology, and diplomacy. Icons adorned its churches, philosophers debated the mysteries of the divine, and the emperors ruled with the confidence of divine right. But fate had other plans. In 1204, during the Fourth Crusade, Latin knights sent to fight for Christ sacked Constantinople instead. For 3 brutal days, the Queen of Cities burned. Treasures gathered since Augustus were plundered. The empire that had preserved Rome's flame for nearly a millennium was broken by the very West it had inspired. Though Byzantium would recover in part, its power was shattered. The final blow would come 2 centuries later. In 1453, the armies of the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II encircled Constantinople. Inside its walls, the last Roman emperor, Constantine XI, prepared for the end. As cannon fire thundered against the Theodosian walls, priests carried icons through the streets, praying for a miracle that would not come. When the walls fell, the emperor fought to the last, his body lost amidst the storm of conquest. The city of Constantine became Istanbul. The Roman Empire, after 2,000 years of glory, was gone. But though the empire fell, its afterlife had only begun. The Renaissance would soon rise in Italy, and with it, a rebirth of Roman art, philosophy, and humanism. Artists like Michelangelo and Raphael looked to the statues of the Caesars for inspiration. Architects resurrected the symmetry and strength of Roman design. Scholars pored over ancient manuscripts, awakening the wisdom of Cicero, Livy, and Tacitus. Once more, the idea of Rome became a language of power, a symbol that kings and empires would forever seek to inherit. When Columbus sailed west, he did so under crowns that bore the legacy of the Holy Roman world. When the British Empire expanded across continents, it called itself a new Rome. Even the American Republic would be built upon Roman ideals of citizenship, senate, and law. And within the heart of Rome itself, The Vatican rose as the spiritual successor of the empire's soul. The Pope's white robes replaced the purple of emperors, and the city that once ruled the world through legions now ruled it through faith. St. Peter's Basilica, built upon the ruins of Nero's circus, became the new center of the world, a place where the echoes of empire and eternity intertwined. Rome had fallen many times, yet it had never truly died. Its stones became cathedrals, its laws became nations, its language became Europe's tongue. The dream of empire still whispers in the corridors of power, in the symbols of government, in the very words of our civilization. For Rome is not just a place, it is an idea that power can be ordered, that civilization can be eternal, that humanity can rise from chaos to greatness, and from greatness to ruin, and still rise again. From the she-wolf's den to the marble halls of emperors, from the ashes of the Republic to the domes of Byzantium, the story of Rome is the story of us all, a mirror held to the ages, reflecting the triumph and tragedy of human ambition. And as the centuries move ever onward, the question still remains, whispered by history itself: can any empire, no matter how vast, ever truly escape the fate of Rome? Centuries after the last emperor's crown had fallen into the dust, the ruins of Rome still breathed silent yet eternal, their shadows stretching across the imagination of humankind. Though empires had risen and collapsed upon her memory, the world never ceased to look back to the Seven Hills, to that ancient city on the Tiber where history itself once ruled. In the quiet ruins, shepherds tended their flocks among the fallen columns of the Forum. Grass grew over marble, and broken statues lay half-buried like the bones of gods. But within those stones, a pulse endured. The Renaissance had reignited the flame of Rome's genius. Now, in the centuries that followed, that fire would spread beyond Italy, shaping nations, revolutions, and the very soul of the modern world. By the 17th and 18th centuries, a pilgrimage had begun, not of faith, but of curiosity. Scholars, artists, and nobles from across Europe journeyed to Rome on what they called the Grand Tour, to walk the streets where Caesar had walked, to touch the stones of the Colosseum, to gaze upon the Pantheon's perfect dome. These were rites of education, of culture, of becoming civilized. The ruins of Rome became not relics of the past, but teachers of the future. It was here that archaeologists began their sacred work. Excavations uncovered forgotten temples, mosaics, and frescoes, fragments of a lost world suddenly reborn into light. The discovery of Pompeii and Herculaneum in the 18th century stunned Europe. Entire cities preserved by volcanic ash, their frescoes vibrant, their streets eerily intact. For the first time, the ancient world was not just legend, it was tangible, alive. Rome's art and architecture became the standard of beauty. The neoclassical movement swept across the West, its columns and domes rising in capitals from London to Washington, Paris to St. Petersburg. The White House, the U.S. Capitol, the British Museum all stood as modern echoes of Roman grandeur. To build like Rome was to claim her legacy, to speak in the universal language of power and permanence. But Rome's inheritance was not of architecture alone. Its ideas, law, citizenship, republic, empire became the scaffolding of the modern world. The Renaissance had given birth to humanism. Now the Enlightenment turned to Rome for lessons in governance and reason. The writings of Cicero shaped the thinkers of the Enlightenment. The Roman Republic inspired the founders of America and the revolutionaries of France. In marble and ink, the Romans taught posterity how to balance freedom with order, ambition with virtue. As Napoleon crowned himself emperor in 1804, he did so beneath a Roman laurel wreath. His armies carried eagles on their standards, invoking the legions of old. Even his enemies, from the British to the Russians, built their monuments in the image of Rome. The 19th century became an age obsessed with antiquity, an age in which nations sought legitimacy through the memory of empire. Yet the deeper scholars dug, the more complex Rome's story became. Beneath the marble ideal lay a society of contradictions, brilliant yet brutal, cultured yet cruel. The same empire that gave us law also gave us slavery. The same civilization that built aqueducts also conquered and crucified. Rome's legacy was not purity, it was power, with all its glory and cost. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the study of Rome had become a science. Archaeologists, philologists, and historians pieced together the empire's vast mosaic, coins whispering of forgotten emperors, inscriptions revealing laws and decrees, papyri resurrecting voices of merchants, soldiers, and slaves. Rome was no longer myth, it was a living record of humanity's greatest triumphs and deepest flaws. Then came the 20th century, and with it, a new generation that would again look to Rome not for wisdom, but for identity. Fascism, in its dark ambition, sought to resurrect the empire's symbols for its own glory. Mussolini marched legions beneath ancient arches, restored the Via Appia, and proclaimed a new Rome. But this was no rebirth of civilization, only an imitation of its shadow. Where the ancients had built, the moderns destroyed. Where Augustus had sought order, tyranny returned in another form. The world saw then what Rome had long warned, that the hunger for empire, once awakened, devours itself. After the Second World War, the ruins of Rome once again stood as silent witnesses, this time to humanity's resilience. Archaeology flourished anew. Excavations deepened at the Forum, the Palatine Hill, Ostia Antica, and across the empire as old frontiers from Hadrian's Wall in Britain to Leptis Magna in Libya. Every shard of pottery, every carved inscription added to a vast, unfolding story. The realization that Rome's greatness lay not only in conquest, but in connection. Its roads, once built for legions, had woven together a continent. Its culture had united people from Spain to Syria. Its laws had created a shared sense of belonging that still echoes in the word civilization. And so, as the modern world entered the 21st century, Rome's legacy continued to evolve not as a dream of empire, but as a mirror of humanity itself. In art, her beauty endures. In law, her logic lives on. In language, her words breathe through every Romance tongue. In architecture, her arches still crown our cities. And in our politics, our ambitions, our rise and fall, Rome's reflection lingers, timeless and unrelenting. Today, as travelers stand before the Colosseum's broken walls, or gaze upon the Pantheon's perfect dome, they do not simply look at ruins. They look at the blueprint of the modern world. They see a civilization that once believed it could master time itself, and in a way, it did. For 2 millennia after its fall, Rome still rules not through legions or emperors, but through the very shape of our thought, the rhythm of our laws. and the dream of eternity it left behind. In the quiet of the Roman Forum at dusk, when the last light of the sun brushes against the columns of Saturn, and the air hums with the echo of ages, one can almost hear it, the whisper of an ancient promise, that though empires may crumble, though centuries may turn to dust, the idea of Rome endures. For Rome was never just a city. It was humanity's greatest experiment, a mirror held to the soul of civilization itself. And perhaps that is why, in every age, we keep returning to it, searching for the secret of what made it rise and the warning of why it fell.